Hi, welcome to the Voice of the Children.
Hello, I am talking to you from heaven. Yes, you heard me right, I am in heaven now.
Welcome to our heavenly channel, Stories from Children in Heaven.
Hi, my name is Arthur. I was born on January 4th, 2014, but I didn't stay long in your world. I will tell you my story, and what happened to me when I was just 6 years old. On June 17, 2020, I was a 6-year-old child living in the West Midlands, England. I was abused, and subsequently killed, by my parents during the COVID-19 pandemic. I was mistreated over the course of several months by my father, Thomas Hughes, and my father's partner, Emma Tustin. This culminated on June 17, 2020, as I told you before, with Tustin killing me via blunt force trauma to my head. Tustin and Thomas Hughes, my father, were convicted on murder and manslaughter charges, respectively, in December 2021. After my parents separated in my infancy, I was initially cared for by my mother Olivia Labinjo-Hughes. When Labinjo-Hughes B. killed her partner in February 2019, responsibility for me was transferred to my father. Thomas Hughes decided to take me, to live with his new partner Emma Tustin, and her children, during COVID-19 related restrictions. Thomas Hughes, my father, and Tustin's behavior towards me, became increasingly neglectful, with me forced to spend extended periods, isolated from the rest of the household. By the time of my death, I was malnourished, suffering from salt poisoning, and covered with over 130 bruises. The case received significant attention in the local area, and across the United Kingdom, provoking discussion about the protection of children at risk of abuse, and criticism against Child Protective Services, for their lack of intervention. I was the son of Olivia Labinjo-Hughes and Thomas Hughes. The two separated shortly before my second birthday. Both Arthur's parents shared custody of me while I lived with my mother. In February 2019, my mom, Labinjo-Hughes, stabbed her new partner, Gary Cunningham, to death after a period of mutual domestic violence. This led to Thomas Hughes, my dad, becoming my sole carer. I changed schools to Dickens Heath Community Primary School, and moved into an annex behind my paternal grandparents' home, with my father. According to my grandmother, I was initially nervous but quickly became a happy, well-rounded child. In August 2019, my father Thomas Hughes met Emma Tustin on the dating website, Plenty of Fish. Thomas Hughes introduced me to Tustin early on in the relationship, and she later stated that she and me were friends straight away. As I returned to school after the summer holidays, a teaching assistant stated that she had no concerns about my well-being. However, my uncle noted that Thomas Hughes seemed to be becoming stricter with me, and I appeared to be more fearful of getting into trouble. An official at my school noted that I became less happy as autumn progressed. She organized a meeting with my father and grandmother about her concerns, that I was developing an obsession with topics, such as guns, death and the news, along with fears about being separated from or killed by my father. There was also an incident during a school nativity play, where I became upset when a baby doll was removed from its crib. In early 2020, my dad Thomas Hughes took me to multiple medical appointments, but I was not diagnosed with any mental health problems. Meanwhile, the COVID-19 pandemic led to the closure of all schools in the UK, and a national lockdown by the end of March 2020. At the beginning of the lockdown, me and my father were staying in Tustin's home. Though my dad Thomas Hughes' mother asked that he and I come to her house, he refused, instead deciding to move in with Tustin at her home in Solihull for the duration of the lockdown. In April 2020, my dad Thomas Hughes returned home with me for a few days due to a disagreement with Tustin. While I was at my grandparents' house, I said that I had been pinned against the wall by Tustin, called a horrible ugly brat, and my grandmother found several bruises on my back. My father Thomas Hughes soon returned to his partner's house, and refused the grandmother's request to leave me at her house for longer, prompting her to report him to social services. The next day, a social worker went to visit my father Hughes and Tustin's household. She was told that my injuries had been sustained in a fight with Tustin's son. The social worker concluded that I was very happy and very safe and that there were no safeguarding issues in the household. My father Thomas Hughes said that Tustin coached the boys to lie about the incident and had warned me they would lose custody of their children if I did not cooperate as well. The incident was later reported to the police again by my uncle with no effect. In May 2020, I was frequently made to stand in the hallway, for long periods of time, as a punishment for my alleged misbehavior. Tustin reported these incidents to my father Thomas, via text messages, and audio clips of me crying. In these clips, I could be heard crying for my grandmother and uncle, and at one point said, "Nobody loves me." The couple used insults such as Satan, Hitler, Devil Child, Weasel and various swear words to refer to me. Thomas Hughes, my father, would frequently threaten violence against me. Tustin said at one point to my father Thomas that, I want you but I don't want him, referring to me. By the end of the month, I was moved out of Tustin's son and daughter's bedroom, and made to sleep on the living room floor. I was made to sleep there, even when the other children slept elsewhere. When my school reopened on 8th of June, I was not in attendance. My dad Thomas Hughes was contacted by the school about the matter, but provided various excuses for my absence. The couple installed a camera at home to monitor me during my isolation. I spent 35 hours of the 3-day period between 12 and 14 June in the hallway, having been forced to go there by my father and Tustin. I was slapped by Tustin for entering the living room. The camera also recorded the couple and Tustin's children enjoying food and leisure activities which I was not allowed to participate in. On 15th of June, Tustin took me with her to spend most of the day at her hairdresser's house. Throughout the 6 hours Tustin was there, she forced me to stand by the door, and frequently shouted and swore at me. I collapsed to the floor as they left the hairdressers, but was not helped by either Tustin or my dad Thomas Hughes when he arrived. Later that evening, my father Thomas Hughes belted my legs and later told Tustin to just end me. On the morning of 16th of June, I appeared on CCTV footage to be weak, in visible pain and struggling to lift my bedclothes. My dad, Thomas Hughes, Tustin and I went back to the hairdresser's house where I was constantly shouted at by the former two. I was secretly given a drink of water by the hairdresser's partner, who later described me as gaunt, malnourished and a poor little kid who was broken. After getting home, Tustin went upstairs at about 2 p.m. Later at trial, the prosecution argued that she gave me an overdose of salt in the bathroom. At around this time though, Tustin denied this. Additionally, Tustin photographed me crying in the hallway at 2:15 p.m. Tustin is believed to have carried out the fatal assault at 2:29 p.m. when she went into the hallway, where I was located. She shook me and hit my head against a hard surface multiple times. The assault is believed to have lasted 1 minute. 12 minutes later, after phoning my father Thomas Hughes, Tustin called 999, "Oh let me tell you, If someone don't know, 999 is the emergency number for the United Kingdom, as well as other countries. By the way, 999 was the first national emergency number in the world, and has been used in the UK since 1937 to 1938. It was chosen for technical reasons, and the number 9 is easy to find on a rotary phone. Let's back to my case. She called 999, and told medics that I fell and banged my head, and while on the floor banged my head another 5 times. Tustin then took a photo of me, I was dying, and she sent to my father Hughes. Paramedics from West Midlands Ambulance Service, and officers from West Midlands Police arrived on scene shortly after the emergency call was made. I was left with an unsurvivable brain injury. I was taken to Birmingham Children's Hospital, however, doctors were unable to save me and I died later that night. I was 6 years old. At the time of my death, a medical review found that I was covered in 130 bruises, that I had been poisoned with salt, and that the extent of my injuries were compared to torture. My case made a significant impact on the local community, and particularly football fans. My favorite team, Birmingham City FC, named a family area at the St Andrews Stadium after me, and supporters sang my name on a march through Birmingham prior to a match. More broadly, I was honored at various football matches on December 4, 2021. The head of Solihull Council reported that social workers had been forced to leave their homes due to abuse and threats related to the case. The incident provoked discussion of the impact of the COVID-19 lockdown on the welfare of vulnerable children. And Longfield, the former Children's Commissioner for England, said, "A lot of the services went onto the screens for children, and this child in particular, Arthur, wasn't in school. And it's much easier for families who want to evade view to do that when they haven't got someone in the room. So there's a big lesson there, instantly about if there is a crisis, there are children who are going to slip from view, and we have to make sure they have the protection, which does need face-to-face contact."
A lot of the services went on to the screens for children, and this child in particular, Arthur, wasn't in school. And it's much easier for families who want to evade view to do that when they haven't got someone in the room. So there's a big lesson there, instantly about if there is a crisis, there are children who are going to slip from view, and we have to make sure they have the protection, which does need face-to-face contact.
Statistics for England suggested that there had been a 20% decrease in referrals to local authorities' children's departments, but a 20% increase in reported cases of child harm, and a 19% increase in child deaths. The trial related to the case of me Arthur Labinjo-Hughes took place at a similar time to the one related to the murder of Star Hobson, another young child who was abused and killed by carers. Several parallels were noted between the cases, such as both children being killed by their parents' new partner, having extended family who tried to help them, and being of known concern to the authorities. Additionally, both were murdered during the COVID-19 pandemic, which was argued to have made it easier for their worsening condition to be hidden from others. In July 2021, Olivia Labinjo-Hughes, Arthur's mother, was convicted of the manslaughter of her partner, and was sentenced to 11 years in prison. Beginning in 2022, Birmingham City and Solihull Moors FC announced an annual pre-season game named the Arthur Cup, with a portion of proceeds from the match going to the NSBCC.
Coventry Combined Court Centre, where Tustin and Hughes were sentenced. Due to the nature of Arthur's injuries and the accounts given by Tustin and Thomas Hughes, both were arrested on the evening of 16th of June, initially on suspicion of assault and then murder. Police officers examined hundreds of videos, audio files and photos found on Tustin's and Hughes' mobile phones, and analyzed thousands of messages they sent each other. They uncovered significant evidence of abuse inflicted on Arthur by both. Emma Tustin was convicted of murdering Arthur Labinjo-Hughes at Coventry Crown Court in December 2021, and was given a life sentence with a minimum of 29 years. She is being held at HMP Peterborough. Thomas Hughes was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 21 years. He is being held at HMP Wakefield. The Attorney General's office said on 4th of December that the sentences would be reviewed to determine whether they were too low under the unduly lenient sentence scheme. Mr. Justice Wall, the presiding judge, described the case in his sentencing remarks as among the most distressing and disturbing cases that he has dealt with. On July 29, 2022, Thomas Hughes' sentence was increased to 24 years on appeal as the judge found his original sentence to be too lenient. A local review was launched into the incident soon after the boy's death. Shortly after the conviction, the government announced that there would be a national inquiry into the case. The review found that Child Protection Services had been involved in Arthur's life on various occasions dating back to 2018 and repeatedly not intervened to help him.
To be blamed. The disturbing case shook the country from Middleton to the Parliament.
The public deserve to know why, in this rare case, things went horrifyingly wrong and what more could be done to prevent such as this happening again in the future.
With Arthur's death and the injuries clearly not self-inflicted, the authorities finally saw through Emma and Thomas's lies. Both were arrested and charged with Arthur's death. On December 3, 2021, at Emma's trial, the judge described the fatal attack as follows. The final act of killing was done by you, Tustin. You shook him so that his head was hyperextended and flexed on his neck, while simultaneously hitting it against the wall or the floor multiple times. The level of violence you used produced forces on his body equivalent to those experienced in a high-speed road traffic collision. The injuries sustained were extensive and devastating. Emma was convicted of murder and received a life sentence with a minimum term of 29 years. Thomas Hughes, who wasn't present during the fatal assault, was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 21 years in prison. In December 2020, it was revealed that their sentences would be reviewed to assess if they were too lenient, possibly leading to longer terms for both.
And a woman who murdered her boyfriend's 6-year-old son has been jailed for life. Arthur Labinjo-Hughes was starved and beaten by Emma Tustin, who has been told she will serve at least 29 years in prison. Arthur's father, Thomas Hughes, has been jailed for 21 years for manslaughter. The judge at Coventry Crown Court said the boy led a lonely and solitary life and their actions were spiteful, dehumanizing and sadistic. Well, joining me now is our correspondent Helen Westerman, who is the head of, we are going to go to the NSPTC, but first of all we're going to go to our correspondent Helena Wilkinson, I think, who has been following this in Coventry. Helena, this has been an utterly horrific, distressing case to see unfold. Just tell us more about what the judge said in sentencing these two today.
Well, the judge today, when he sentenced Tustin and Hughes, and important to point out that Tustin was brought to the court here, however she refused to come up to the courtroom to be sentenced. She remained in the cells, but the judge continued as if she was in the courtroom when he sentenced the pair today. The judge, Justice Wall, said the case was one of the most distressing and disturbing that he had ever dealt with. He said neither defendant had shown any remorse for their behaviour, and that their behaviour was spiteful and sadistic. And he also said one of the most troubling aspects of this case was that Tustin's own two children, he said, lived a perfectly happy life in that house just yards from where Arthur was subjected to unthinkable abuse. He said to Tustin that she was a manipulative woman, and as you say today, he has sentenced her to life in prison with a minimum term of 29 years. He sentenced Hughes, Arthur's father, to 21 years in prison. And as you say, the most harrowing case, and jurors here during the 2-month trial had to hear and listen to the most difficult details about what happened to 6-year-old Arthur and the cruelty, the unimaginable cruelty that was inflicted on him by both Hughes and Tustin. He was left dehydrated, he was starved, he was force-fed salt-laced meals, and he was also left in the lounge to sleep on the floor without a mattress, and the jury was shown CCTV of 6-year-old Arthur in the lounge in the days and on the morning before he was murdered by Tustin, and he appeared to have a limp. He looked incredibly weak, he was crying, and he was struggling to lift up a duvet. The court also heard today some victim personal statements. That's an opportunity for family members to tell those who've committed the crimes about the impact that they have had on them. And we heard from Arthur's paternal grandmother, Joanne Hughes, who said today in court that Arthur was happy, was joyous, was exuberant, and that his death had turned their life into perpetual grey. It also emerged during the trial that Arthur had been seen by social workers 2 months before he died. It was Joanne Hughes, his paternal grandmother, who spotted a bruise on Arthur, but the trial heard that it was concluded by the social workers that there were no safeguarding concerns. But there is an independent review now underway, which will be talking to all of the authorities and those who may have come into contact with Arthur to see if there were opportunities missed. But unimaginable cruelty that was inflicted by Hughes and Tustin on a 6-year-old defenceless little boy, and they have today been sentenced, as I say, Tustin to life with a minimum term of 29 years, and Hughes, Arthur's father, who was convicted yesterday here of manslaughter, he has been sentenced today to 21 years.
Helena Wilkinson in Coventry, thank you very much indeed for that. Well, joining me now is Helen Westerman, the head of NSPCC local campaigns. The details are, of course, horrific, really unbearable to listen to. What's your reaction to hearing about yet another horrific case in Britain's history?
I think we're all still struggling to come to terms with what Arthur endured before he was killed by Tustin and Hughes, and their sentencing marks the end of the first stage in achieving some sort of justice for Arthur. That child safeguarding practice review must now leave no stone unturned in establishing exactly what took place before Arthur died and whether more could have been done to protect and ultimately save him. But it also needs to inform a wider discussion of how we prevent these appalling cases of child cruelty from ever happening again.
Of course, we hear that sentiment every time that these tragic cases unfold, and yet they recur. What is the wider problem with preventing this sort of behaviour, given if social services and the police are alerted by family members in any case, why is a family then, why is any child still vulnerable?
I mean, in this situation, we'll have to wait to the serious case review and the safeguarding practice review in relation to Arthur, but more widely, it's very challenging for those working in local authorities. This happened at the beginning of the pandemic, perhaps when different working practices were in place. That's no excuse, but this inquiry will really look at what was missed, if anything, in relation to Arthur. We certainly heard at the NSPCC during the first year of the lockdown, we had an increase in the number of contacts to the NSPCC, a 23% increase from members of the public concerned about child welfare. So, people are coming forward and they're talking about this, and that needs to be actioned.
And when it's not actioned, what is the reason? Is it lack of will? Is it lack of organisation, lack of resources, lack of expertise? What is the what are the the actual reasons for repeat failure by these organisations?
There can be a number of different reasons, and each serious case review will outline what's happened. That could be a lack of communication. We also know that frontline social workers are extremely stretched. So, I mean, for this inquiry, we'll find out what happened and if anything was mixed in the case of Arthur.
Is the training of social workers where it needs to be? Do they know, is there expertise in looking out for the signs when children, people might be covering, obviously will be covering up this sort of action?
I mean, I think it's really, social workers obviously are trained and are dealing with this sort of situation, not so extreme, but day in, day out. And again, this inquiry will really unpick what happened, whether anything was missed, and what could have been done differently to potentially save her.
Okay, we will leave it there. Helen Westerman from the NSPCC, thank you very much indeed.
The local community and Arthur's grandma held a huge vigil for Arthur that took over the whole road as they released balloons. It shocked the country so much that they stopped soccer matches at 6 minutes to pay tribute to him. Because of all the attention, the government has promised that they're going to make some major changes so similar cases are handled. Like, how about making sure they stop things before it's too late? But honestly, we've heard this kind of promise before. But this time, I hope it works, because as lockdowns and other restrictions are lifted, I have a nasty feeling we'll hear about more and more disturbing cases like this. And while the chances of Emma Tustin making it out of prison in one piece are looking really slim, she still has a better chance than she ever gave poor Arthur. He really deserved so much more. So, fly high.
Now, footballers and supporters across the country have paid tribute to murdered schoolboy and Birmingham fan Arthur Labinjo-Hughes after his killers were jailed yesterday. Birmingham players wore "Arthur, we love you" t-shirts before their match at Millwall, and they also brought a banner onto the field. Arthur was just 6 years old when he died, and the game at the Den was paused in the 6th minute for a minute's applause. And that tribute was replicated at games up and down the country today.
This was my story. I am Arthur Labinjo-Hughes. I am resting now peacefully in heaven, but there is more other children having same situation and no one helping them. Please report anything you suspect, to help the children. You may save a child life, before it's too late, like what happened with me. Thank you for watching, and listening to us, every week, new story from heaven. Please, come back.
The United Nations General Assembly adopted the Declaration of the Rights of the Child, which defines children's rights to protection, education, health care, shelter, and good nutrition. Please, save the children and protect them from harm.